Our next teller is Souri. Is that right? Okay. And she spends her time working with her therapy clients and hanging out with her husband and 3 pets and her kids when they're home from college. She also loves to disco dance, play the piano, attend a public speaking group called Toastmasters, and has a passion for home interior decorating. The person she admires is her mother, who ended up getting sick with a chronic, extremely painful illness around the time the story was set, when she was in 7th grade. She handled her difficult situation with grace and always tried to make others laugh with her jokes and stories, even in times of personal distress. She died at the age of 50, which was 25 years ago. Her perseverance is what I will always remember and admire most about her. Sarah.
Good evening, everybody. My story is about growing up as an Indian immigrant in the 1970s in a small town in Ohio. And let me warn you right now, it is filled with teenage angst. It is February 1979. I am in the 7th grade and have been invited to Valerie Simpson's 13th birthday celebration. The whole idea of attending this sleepover party is very exciting for me, especially because Valerie is pretty and popular, and I am not. I'm very nearsighted, and I wear thick glasses. As you can see, not much has changed. I still wear thick glasses. My dark curly hair doesn't exactly match up with the long, blonde, straight hairstyles I usually see on the cover of my teen magazine. I have braces and overnight headgear. And I often wear a t-shirt that proudly exclaims, "Tin grins are in." I am the only Indian student in my school, other than my 2 siblings, and I don't like being so different from everybody else. My family has immigrated to the United States from India just a few years ago. All I want is to fit in, but I struggle to make friends. So, being included on the birthday party guest list of one of the coolest girls in school is a huge deal for me. There are 2 weeks between the time I get the invitation and the actual date of the party. I spend those 2 weeks obsessing about what I will wear to this party. I decide on my long sleeve Michael Jackson shirt, because Val and I both adore MJ, with my Jordache brand bell-bottom blue jeans that should be worn in just enough in time for the party. And my new suede earth shoes will complete my ensemble perfectly. The weekend before the party, I go shopping with my dad, and we head straight for the Sears record section, my favorite part of the mall. There, I pick out my birthday present to Valerie, the latest Michael Jackson album, of course, which I know that Val wants. Yes, sir, this sleepover party is going to be an amazing night for me, and possibly my one opportunity to get in with that in crowd. My family lives in a small, hilly town in southeastern Ohio, a type of community in which most people leave their doors unlocked, and even young children often walk to school by themselves. My mom doesn't have her driver's license yet, so my dad will be the one driving me across town to Val's house for the evening. However, I am worried that my dad might walk me to the front door and embarrass me in front of Val and her friends by speaking English in his Indian accent. So, I come up with a brilliant plan which will avoid the possibility of my dad speaking to Val or her friends at Val's front door. When it's time to leave for the party, I tell my dad, "You can just drop me off at the Bailey's twins' house. They live really close to Val's house." I know that the Baileys are also invited to this party, so I figure I'll just stop at their house first and walk over to Val's with them. Now, I'm not exactly sure which house is Val's, but I am certain that she lives on the same street as the Baileys. I don't tell anyone my plan ahead of time, and I only bring up this idea of getting dropped at the Bailey's house after my dad get into the car, because I know my mother would never approve of this idea. It is early evening and still light out when my father and I arrive at our destination. I can tell that my dad isn't very comfortable with dropping me off in front of the Bailey's house, so I assure him I'll be fine. Okay, it is snowy and freezing cold outside, but the sun has not set yet. we can see lights on inside the Bailey's house. I'll just knock on the door, the Bailey's parents will answer, and I can walk to Val's house with the Bailey twins. Then I will be on my way to Val's party and hopefully to being part of the popular group for the rest of my life. What could possibly go wrong? I insist that my dad should drive away before I walk up the steps to the Bailey's front door. After all, I have just turned 13 years old and have no need for adult supervision. I feel a keen sense of newfound independence as I wave goodbye to my father. I watch eagerly as the taillights of our blue station wagon with fake wood paneling slowly disappear down the streets. I am so relieved that my dad will not be embarrassing me with his Indian accent on my very important and life-changing night. So far, my perfect plan is working perfectly. I walk up the steps to the Bailey's front door and ring the doorbell a couple of times, but nobody answers right away. I assume they must be in the back part of the house. I wait a few minutes and try the doorbell again, several times. Then I realized something I hadn't even thought of until just now. The Bailey's parents are not home, and the twins must have already left for Val's party. I stand on the front porch for a while, hoping that somehow the Bailey's parents forgot something and will return soon and will help me. Finally, I give up and I turn around to face the street. I notice that the sun is slowly starting to set, and the daylight I had counted on is quickly dwindling. I know I have to move on to plan B. The only problem is that I don't have a plan B. As I trudge back down the steps to the sidewalk, I suddenly remember a minor detail that had somehow slipped my mind when I originally planned this evening. The Bailey twins do live near Valerie, but their house isn't on the same street as her house. Val lives up the hill on the street directly above the twin streets. The only way to get to Val's house, or even Val's street, from where I'm standing, is to climb up through a tall, steep, dark cemetery up to Val's street. Of course, I'm afraid to walk through the graveyard alone, but I don't have much of a choice at this point. How bad can it be? I start trekking up the hill, but I run into one problem right away: my earth shoes. I chose to wear them tonight more for form than function. They don't have good traction, and they keep slipping on the ice and snow. At one point, I lose my footing entirely, fall to my knees, and drop the trash bag which holds my sleeping bag and Val's new Michael Jackson album. It glides back down the hill a few feet and lands with a thud on a large gravestone. The thought that I have possibly cracked the new Michael Jackson album that was going to help me get in with the in crowd is perhaps the worst moment of the evening for me. I retrieve the bag. I take a moment to acknowledge that this might very well be the night I will meet my maker. The cemetery is now almost pitch black. I am fairly confident that there are murderers hiding behind all the gravestones, just waiting for the right moment to get me. I'm also coming to the slow, sick realization that if I do die right now, I will never marry Michael Jackson. I am absolutely terrified. I start crying, I want to give up, but somehow at this point I've made it almost halfway up that hill. Right now, I want nothing more than to be back home with my parents and my two younger siblings, eating my mother's wonderful Indian cooking for dinner. You know, I wouldn't even mind if my mom was wearing a sari tonight. For once in my life, I would welcome my parents talking to me in our Indian language that used to embarrass me. But the reality is that I am stuck by myself in a dark graveyard on the other side of town from my house with limited options and no food. As I start crying and lean on a tombstone to brace myself, I hear faint voices calling my name from the top of the hill. I found out later that my dad has called Val's house to make sure I arrive safely. So a crew of cool and popular 7th grade girls, plus Val's parents, are coming to the cemetery to look for me. I realize now that my self-created nightmare is far more embarrassing than anything my dad would have said in his Indian accent at Valerie's front door. With a huge lump in my throat, I yell back weakly to the teen search and rescue party a few times so they will know approximately where to locate me. Val and a couple of her friends make their way carefully down the hill to find me. They take items out of my bag to help me carry my load. The girls link arms with me, and we trudge up what seems like Mount Everest to the safety of Val's house. I have never been so happy and so humiliated at the same time. It has been 40 years now since I got lost at that dark cemetery on the way to Valerie Simpson's 13th birthday party in the middle of February of 1979. Now I'm doing the math. Has it been 40 years? Close enough. Anyway, 35. We all had a great time at the party, and I remember staying up all night eating pizza, talking, and dancing to those Michael Jackson songs. Valerie was thrilled with her new MJ album, which somehow did survive the journey, by the way. Val and her friends were very nice and welcoming to me that evening, but I never did become part of the in crowd. As much as 7th grade girls are known for being dramatic, I think maybe I brought a little too much drama to Val's 13th birthday party sleepover. Looking back, I am glad it was still the 1970s when I got lost in that cemetery on the way to her sleepover, because the Michael Jackson video Thriller had not come out yet. There was no way I would have walked through a cemetery if I thought it was filled with zombies. But then again, I think I would have done just about anything to get into that in crowd. Thank you.